I come to a ditch and we're looking at, all right, what makes of interest for this particular site? As we had kind of talked before, you can kind of, there's some floodplain benches that are already being formed from this ditch that Mother Nature wants there. And basically what happens is when that water comes from here and it starts rising, when it gets to this point here, that's when it's starting to cut that scour. You have this area where the water's coming up, and it's cutting across, making that bench area. That tells me in this certain area, now that might be a 2-inch rain event, it might be a 4-inch rain event that causes that scour at that particular height. You can look at this bank here, similar feature. This is solid ground up here where my hand is. Likely, that is the elevation at where that Mother Nature wants that to be the bench area. So you're looking at, you know, 1.5 feet or 2 foot, let's say, off of the water level. That's where that water is getting at that point where it's going to really start scouring those banks, causing those banks to slough in. That's where you get the shear faces of soil exposed. But in this case, when I'm seeing features like this in place, this is what I want to mimic. I want to come back in by doing our designs and working on the engineering side of this, is to mimic this little floodplain bench that Mother Nature already has in place. There's a lot of factors that come into play when you're looking at 2 stages to see what sites are good, what sites are bad. Number one, we come here to this site today, there's no trees on it. That makes it a good site for me. We're in the business of planting trees as well, trees and wetlands and those natural filters out on the landscape. Where I'm standing here today is void of trees. That's a great consideration, number one. Number two, the soils in the area. Are these soils at the bench area and on the side slope and those, are they going to be conducive to vegetation growth? We're standing in Brookston, Indiana. The soils here are very forgiving. We're dealing with a lot of loamy type soils, so there's about any variety of vegetation that we can plant on these that are going to grow readily and grow very fast and get that quick establishment of that vegetation to protect that exposed soil and to begin working. These 2-stage ditch benches, once they're established, year after year after year, as there's some deposition on them, as there's contact with that water, these benches are a gift that keeps on giving. They are going to start, they continue to remove more and more nitrogen and phosphorus out of the waters than they had when they were first constructed. So that's a great thing to note as the 2-stage ditch goes on. It's doing more work the older it gets in these systems. But looking at the soil type in the area to make sure it's going to be conducive for vegetation growth. Looking at the velocity that's coming down this ditch, and I know it's probably not we'll see what we can do here, but just kind of giving you a perspective. You know, we just got off of probably about an inch rain event. Last week we had about a 3 or 4 inch rain event come through this area. So this water is up a little bit here today. You can see it's somewhat cloudy. As I put my hand in the water, you probably can't visually see that as well. But I'm going to drop this little seed head in there to kind of give a perspective in terms of the velocity that's coming through this actual ditch. That's kind of common. When we're looking at this, we're kind of receding from a few rain events. When you start getting into excessive velocities, and you'll know excessive velocities when you see them, you're going to see a lot of scouring happening. When you put benches on those areas, they're probably not going to hold. That there's so much intensity of water flow coming down them, and plus there's not going to be as much residence time or contact between the grass vegetation on the benches and that water that's flowing through them. When you go into areas that are fairly stagnant, waters that are not moving that rapidly at all, or more or less setting there, if you construct a 2-stage ditch in an area like that, it's going to be functioning more like a wetland. These systems right here were designed to function as conveyors of water from point A to point B, and what we are wanting to do with the 2-stage ditch is just enhance that. Keep the current infrastructure in place. Where I'm standing here, if there is no need, if there is adequate drainage being provided for the adjacent landowners here, I do not want to do anything in the water setting itself. So in the area that's taken in by water here, I do not want to put the excavator at all. all the work that we're going to be doing with the two-stage ditch is on the bank. Now, if there is a particular case, and many times when we do come to a site and we're looking at a two-stage ditch, so today, you know, there's scouring in places, it's being hid, there's benches that Mother Nature is already forming in place that notes well. You know, I have fairly decent substrate down here around on my foot as I move it around. You know, we have some cobble, we have some rock material, some silt that's piled in on that, but there's about a 2-inch layer of sediment, and that's what's underneath of it. Great habitat, and that's what we're wanting to do. By providing that floodplain with the two-stage, we're going to have this grass encroachment that's going to be coming in slowly and slowly. We're going to keep the flows and maintain the flows in the centerline channel, keep the velocities flowing where it is, keep it as a more of a self-cleaning, self-flushing system to get back to this, to get back to the normal grade, to therefore reduce the impacts of coming into an area like this and having the county surveyor that may be in the area of doing a bottom dipping of the ditch and removing it of a lot of these key substrates that we need there to enhance the aquatic life that are in these little harbors. Science that's behind that has done a lot of research on half-mile projects, so we know what they gain. We know the benefits of those half-mile projects in those drainage areas, and we know that we would like to at least do half-mile projects on. Here is the same segment of ditch just downstream from where we were looking at. This site here would be one I would not look at for a potential for a two-stage ditch. Simply because coming by, I see a lot of wooded vegetation on the bank, a lot of trees, and a lot of shrubs that are providing good habitat as well as good water quality benefits because of the shading to this ditch, for the oxygen levels in that stream, for the aquatic life. So even though it would be great to continue this two-stage ditch on past the point that we were at, it would be infeasible to do so in my mind because of the current woody vegetation that we have on the bank that's providing the benefits to water quality in terms of shading, benefits to that aquatic life. Cooler water holds more oxygen for them, as well as the habitat corridor potential that this provides for various numbers of upland game as well as wildlife in general.